Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, let's see about the asynchronous nature of the JavaScript. So as we've seen that the language JavaScript is a single-threaded one. So we have to achieve this asynchronity using some structures. So let's see what is a structure and what are the functionalities they have. So let me start off with a very simple function. So let me define it here. So here I have a function called process data. It's doing nothing but it's just printing the processing data onto the terminal or the console. So we have to call this a function process data. Let me call it. Okay. So let's execute and see what we're gonna get. So we got the output that it is processing the data. So this is how we usually define a function in the JavaScript or in Node.js. But okay, the main problem arises when we want multiple functions to be executed, when we want a lot of APIs to be called, so a lot of fetching has to be done. So in such a case, how can we handle such sort of task? So one of the primitive a feature that the JavaScript provides us is called as callbacks. So let me show the example of it. Okay, so this is an example. So here we have the same function that is processing the data, but let's say this processing, okay, let's say this function, it takes a lot of time. Let's assume it's gonna take about 2 seconds to execute. But 2 seconds might seem to be, a very little time, but in real time it is actually considered as a lot of time. So if this function process data is taking a lot of time, then we are not supposed to run any other a function, or we have to block all other statements which are succeeding this process data function. So is there a way that I can say whenever the process data function is ready, I'm going to run some other thing. So is there a way that I can do that? So let us see this a function and analyze what it's doing. So here we have a function called fetch data. It is so there is an input called as callback. I don't know what this callback is. Let's assume it is as some sort of input variable. And now inside of this, I'm using something called as a set timeout. I hope you're aware of what this set timeout does. When we copy this and execute here. So a set timeout, so it is going to run this routine whatever is inside of this function. It is going to run this after a 2000 milliseconds. That means after a 2 seconds it is going to run whatever is inside of that, right? So we have this function here, a set timer. So it is going to log that the data is fetched from the server after 2 seconds, as we're expecting the server to respond in 2 seconds. So that means, this function which is called as a process data, I have to process the data only after fetching it from the server, right? So I cannot run this. So I have to only run this function only after the data is fetched. So we have to install a mechanism, so which is able to run, which is able to execute some part of, okay, it is able to execute a procedure when some event has happened. So okay, I can understand that I can write some code to sort of do something after some event has happened, so we can run some sort of event handlers. But is there a way that I can use an input function? I can call a function using its variable name, because it isn't practical in the languages like Java and Python. But in JavaScript you can actually do that. So I'm here calling this fetch data by passing in a reference of this function. So how is this possible? I'm saying this is the process data. I'm actually passing this as a variable. So JavaScript, we have object-oriented programs, and we have procedural-oriented programming languages. But JavaScript, it follows multiple paradigms. But one of the most important paradigm that it actually supports is called as the functional programming. So as it is a good member of the functional programming, so JavaScript is going to treat every function as an object. It's going to treat it as a simple variable. So we can just pass it to this a fetch data function. So we are calling it as a callback. And now after the set timeout, so after 2 seconds, the server is going to, so we are trying to simulate that task, so it is going to return me something. I'm going to console it onto the log system, and then I'm going to call this function callback. So using this brackets, I'm going to call it using the reference that I have got as an input, right? So this is a very interesting syntax. I might not be able to understand. So let's try to run this thing and see what it gets. So ran it. So yeah, so after 2 seconds, it has printed that the data is fetched from the server and the processing data has started. So this is how we use something called as callbacks. So callback is nothing but a function, and the ability of a function to take another function as an input is called as the higher order functions, or we can call them as the callback functions as well. So these callback functions, so they can take a function as an input argument, and it can call the function in the middle of its code. Right. So this is how the callbacks are enabled in JavaScript. But there is actually an issue with this with this approach of coding. So let me put another example and show you this thing. Okay, so in this code I have a function which is fetching the user data using the user ID, and I'm actually giving it a reference of a function, a callback. So after the 2 seconds, a user ID will be fetched, right? And after fetching the user ID, I'm going to use my user ID as an input parameter to my callback function, right? And then I have something called as a fetch orders, and it is going to take in a user ID and a callback function. So using the user ID, it is going to fetch the user, so it's going to do some sort of orders. So it is going to fetch some other data using the same user ID, and using that user ID which was received here, I'm going to call my callback function. And here I have another function called as fetch order details. It is going to take in an order ID. It is going to fetch some data. I'm just trying to simulate that, and it is going to call back. So it is going to execute the callback function. And then we have another function called as process final step. So it's gonna end the entire transaction, right? So now I need a function. So I need these functions to work in a way such that first I need to fetch the user data, and then I need to fetch the orders, and then I need to fetch the order details. So if I were to call each one of them in a single uh, one after other, it's not going to work, because these functions, they're not atomic, right? So every function was supposed to take at least 2 seconds to get a response. So meanwhile, if I were to execute the other function, I'm gonna get a nonsense output. I have to wait till the first function is done, and then only I have to start the second function. So if it is my use case, then I have to run this function. Okay, I have to see if my first function has got a response, and if it it has got a response, I'm going to call the second one, and the second one is going to be called, and it is going to do all the processing, and after 2 seconds it is going to say I got the response, and now I'm calling my next one. So this is how we sort of chain all those functionalities, and then at the last we're going to call the process final step. So it's going to end everything. So now so if we were to use the asynchronous approach, we have to call each of them, and in that way we either have to wait for a long time, or it's not a great approach, right? So it will always give you a wrong output, and your program might eventually crash if it's not properly handled. So in this so for okay, for this use case, so we can use the callbacks. So here I'm actually calling the fetch user data function. I am passing 1 as my key, and it is going to have a user ID, right. So this is my user ID one, and this is my callback, and for this callback I have to pass the user ID. I'm going to pass it, and using that user ID, this is my function which is defined. So this is my callback, and then this using the output of this call of this callback, I'm going to call my the other callback, which is in the fetch orders. I'm going to provide the definition of the fetch orders callback, and then I'm going to provide the function, and next I'm actually giving a definition of the this callback, and then finally I am calling the a process final step. So in this way I have sort of chained all the outputs, but as you can see, we are not able to understand what's happening, because we are not able to understand what's the output of which function, and which callback is being executed now. So it's all a big mess, and if you observe this sequence, it seems like a pyramid. So we call this as the callback hell. So why is this hell? Because we have to um, make this a nested call, so it is very hard to manage. So is there a way where we can use some sort of syntactic sugar and make it look a bit easy and more readable for the developer? So we can do that using using another concept called as a promise. So what is a promise? So the main problem that we have is with this asynchronous function. So the a set timeout function, or maybe any sort of a competition operation. So we are not sure, if it is successfully completed or not. So instead we can define something called as a promise. A promise is nothing but an object. So it has a three states. It can be, so initially when it was in execution, it will be in the pending state, and it might reach to an end, and at the end it is going to be either a fulfilled or rejected, because the response could be fulfilled or it could be rejected. So using these two, using these two components, we can define what the next step should be. So in this way promises work, and promises are another way we can achieve asynchronous. So now let's remove this and write this enter. So let's see how this entire code looks using promises. Fine. Okay, so here we didn't change anything. We just, so instead of using the set timeout function as our internal mechanism, so we use a return keyword, and we are returning a new promise. So a promise is just an object. So it is taking the resolve. So resolve and reject are the two outputs that we can expect from a promise. So the whatever we gave in the resolve is going to be executed if the response was successful, and if the response was unsuccessful, we're going to execute whatever which is written in the reject functionality. But in this case, I'm just going to use the resolve, since we are only expecting the data to be fetched, and then it should be further processed, right? So let's see how it works. So we have created a new promise, and so this is a lambda syntax, right? So as a lambda function, we're defining this a set timeout function, which in turn takes another lambda. So it is saying that so the user data is fetched, and then, so since the user data is fetched, so we have kind of resolved the form. So we resolved the a promise. So it is a success event. So it's a fulfilled event. So we are going to resolve. So we are going to call the resolve. So this resolve is nothing but another callback function, right? So for this callback function, I have to give the user ID as my input, as we did in the first example. And now we have similarly modified the fetch orders. It is now also returning a new promise, and it is also resolving to a user ID. So it's solving, and then for the fetch order details, we again got a new promise. It is going to resolve it into, and here we are only calling the result since the our process final step is not taking any arguments, and then finally this is going to be called. So in this in the a previous example where we have used callbacks, so we got into something called as a callback hell. But here we can see how it works. So the fetch user data is our first promise. So this is our main promise. So this promise is going to return something, and if it is going to resolve, so the resolve, so so we are returning this thing, right? So we are returning a promise, and we are calling this, and we are making a callback to be a resolve of this user ID. So whatever is being resolved will be there in this dot then function. So using the uh, dot then, we can sort of chain the way the functionalities were to be worked, right? So and then, so here we have a better syntax of understanding how different functions are working with each other. So we can just say, okay, if, for the fetch users, you fetch the user of one, and then you can fetch the orders. So this is again another promise, and then you do another promise, and then you're gonna do the final step crossing. So all of these are nothing but promise objects, and then if any of them are not giving you the resolved output, so and they are rejecting that, and then we can use the dot catch and catch the error, and we can cancel it. So everything which is resolved will be with the I will be present in the then, and everything that is rejected is presented with the catch. So this is actually a very great way of programming, but see, even a promises has its own issues. So we had to come up with something which is a more of a syntactic sugar, so we can write an asynchronous function as simple as we write a synchronous function. So this still looks like you have to do the dot then, and every function has to return a new promise, so we have to manage the promises as well. So is there a way that I can write a sole program which can manage all of the asynchronous activities? So we can achieve that using the ECMAScript 12 versions, a new feature called as async await, right? So now okay, let's look at this. So we didn't change anything in this three functions. So these are the same functions which are returning new promises, but instead of using the dot then chaining, we are going to use something which is very readable. So we call this as an async function. So the async is not the most important thing. The most important thing is this await keyword. So this await keyword is going to wait till this function is going to return something. Until a response is got, it is not gonna let the other operations to perform. So in the same way, I am saying, okay, you first call this fetch user data for one, and get me the result, and you make every other thing wait till that. Okay, so I got my user ID. So I send this user ID to my fetch orders and wait. Okay, you got the outputs, and then you store it in the order ID, and then you await for the fetch order details, and then you process final step. So in this way we can define functionality, see, so we can see the exact flow of data. So this is very much readable. This is the best way we can use. But to use the await keyword, we have to, so it has to be presented inside a function. So we have to create a function, and that function has to be explicitly defined as a async function. So we have to define an async function, and inside the function we can call all the other promise related functions, and we can make them await, and then finally we have to call the function in our program later. So in this way we can achieve the asynchronity. So async and await is actually considered the best way of achieving asynchronity in the JavaScript. So this is how the asynchronous JavaScript works. So it lets us to a sort of chain all these asynchronous functions and make them work in a single stretch. So I think that's all about the asynchronous JavaScript. So we'll see you in another video.